China stands firmly against all forms of hegemonism and power politics, said President Xi Jinping at the opening session of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China. The most important event in China's political calendar, the once-in-a-5-year Congress convened on 16th October and will go on till the 22nd of this month. Around 2,300 delegates from across China have gathered at Beijing's Great Hall of the People for the week-long event to appoint the CCP's top leadership and also approve the country's roadmap for the next 5 years. President Xi, who is also the party's general secretary, the chairman of the CCP Central Military Commission as well, delivered a wide-ranging speech talking about security, modernization of military, also COVID-19, unilateralism, and most importantly, Taiwan. Each of these significant aspects, China's policy directions on its domestic as well as international issues, what they mean for the region and the world at large. All of this and much more in this edition of Perspective Today with three very distinguished panelists who are joining us. Pleased to welcome Professor Shrikant Kondapalli, Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, former Ambassador Suresh K. Goyal, and Mr. Liu Roja, he's Associate Professor, International Studies, Flame University, Pune. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program today. Professor Kondapalli, let me begin the program today with you. Before we begin discussing the different aspects of President Xi Jinping's speech, help us and our viewers understand why is this Congress so significant? Why is it different from the typical Congress that happens every 5 years?
I think this Congress is very important because there was a lot of speculation about President Xi Jinping's third term. Since the March 2018 National People's Congress resolution on extending the president's tenure. This is about General Secretary of the party. Although there are no limits to this position, yet Deng Xiaoping previously had put up a norm for two-term period. So 68 years as the limit for the Politburo Standing Committee members. Since there is a lot of speculation and reports about the third term for Xi Jinping in this Congress, so that is very significant. Partly because he had initiated several iconic projects like China Dream, China Rejuvenation, 2049 Socialist Modernization, which has been preponed for 2035 scenarios. And also, most important, he said in the 19-party Congress before in 2017 about building a world-class military in order to fulfill the China Dream, China Rejuvenation. And the first centennial has been celebrated of the Communist Party in 2021 last year, also coinciding with what they call as well-off society construction, roughly the equivalent of per capita income of the European countries, although they have not been able to reach that level. And the second centennial in 2049, which was invoked in the yesterday's speech on the socialist modernization. So these are significant aspects of the 20th Party Congress. What is, of course, the context is President Xi also mentioned in the report about the momentous developments happening all across and also providing strategic opportunities for China in this regard. As you know, the world has been shut down for the past 2.5 years with the COVID-19 that originated in Wuhan in October 2019 and spread across, killing roughly about 6.5 million people and all across the world, and nearly 5 lakh people in India. And that suggests that the supply chain related problems are uppermost, and that created a void in trade, global trade, and global economic growth rates. Everyone's growth rates have fallen, while, of course, India this year is growing at around 8%. China is growing likely at 2.4%, according to World Bank figures. So this is also a momentous development in the sense that there is a global happening on this. Second, of course, is the Ukrainian war, which created in food, fuel, fertilizer prices increase, again affecting the global growth rates substantially. And why is it that this is a strategic opportunity for China? They think that the Americans are in decline, and so they want to occupy the center stage, as Xi Jinping mentioned in the previous Party Congress report. So if that is the ambition of China, then we have to see also what would be the position of India in this regional and global order.
Certainly. So we'll discuss what the implications will be. We'll discuss what the implications will be on India, the region, and the world as well. And for that, I'll go to the ambassador. But before that, Professor Roger, let me come to you. Since Professor Kondapalli spoke about Chinese ambition, let me get your perspective on what really is the agenda. What are some of the most significant aspects that President Xi Jinping spoke about in his speech? How different was it from 2017 in terms of the areas that he put his thrust upon?
I think this 20th Party Congress in this year actually has been a very monumental thing, not only in the history of the CCP, but also in the history of China, and it will have broader impact to the world. Because if you remember in 10 years before, in the 18th Party's Congress of CCP, when Xi Jinping just rose to power, he was actually viewed as the hopefuls for democratization of China. Even a lot of China hands in the US or in the Western world had high hope on him because they thought that Xi Jinping can be a leader to, for China to lead China to further openness to the world. However, after 5 years, these things are not happening because in 2013, he just announced the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. And after 2 years, they come up with detailed guidelines for this ambitious geopolitical project to be launched. And in 2017, in the 19th Party's Congress, Xi Jinping smoothly transitioned in his second term. But at the same time, Donald Trump became the president of the United States, and the US-China wars curtain was raised. And that was the year that the two giants across the Pacific Ocean entered officially into a competition relationship. So after those 5 years, things are getting worse because in 2018, everybody knows that Xi Jinping started to cancel the term limit, so that after the 19th Party Congress, he will still stay in the position as the president of China for next 5 years, and most importantly, he will still grasp the party power. So this 20th Party's Congress, although a lot of people were guessing before it happens that Xi Jinping may relinquish or give up part or the full capacity of his power to step down or anything, but it is not happening. So we can see that Xi Jinping in this Party's Congress, he secure his power.
Right.
That's the first thing. So secondly, he will actually put security, the national security, the political security, or his power security to be the priority in the Chinese political agenda for the coming 5 years. And this can be create a lot of impacts for the international politics for the countries surrounding China. Well, first is Taiwan, because if you notice, in 2024, 2 years after, Taiwan is going to have another presidential election. So if the pan-green or the pro-independence DPP again becomes or grabs the presidency, this will definitely create some tension between Taiwan and China. And at the same time, the US is also seeing its power transition in the next presidential election. If the Republicans or even hardliners in the Republican Party, such as Donald Trump and his factions, become the president again, this will also create the likelihood that the U.S.-China relationship will worsen.
Certainly.
And
so we'll come back to the U.S.-China relations in just a bit, Professor Roger. But before that, because you mentioned immediate neighbors, and India happens to be just the next door neighbor, there have been turbulence in our relationships under President Xi Jinping's term. So, Ambassador, it looks like, and strong indications that an unprecedented third term, maybe a fourth one as well in the times to come as well for President Xi Jinping. But what does it mean for India?
Absolutely. I think the way I look at this current ongoing Congress is that number one, it is an opportunity. And I think the first and the foremost priority for Xi Jinping will be to consolidate his control over the party. A third term, fourth term, they really simply become numbers. But the fact is that Xi Jinping is ensuring through this party session that with the changes in the standing committee, Politburo standing committee, it is full of the people who will support his agenda and who all of them, the remaining six, will be his friend, his loyals, and not the people who can oppose him even marginally. So that is number one, control. Number two, I do detect that there is a huge emphasis on a kind of, if I may use the word, reversal of China from a reformist agenda to going back to the policy of the phrase they keep on using, the Chinese communism with, socialism with Chinese characteristics. Now, that's a traditional phrase. China has always used it. But the number of times this has been now referred to in the speech clearly indicates to me that socialism has become a priority for them rather than just the economic reforms. In fact, in some places, the speech also refers to the balances, creeping imbalances in the economy, unhappiness among certain sections of people. So clearly there is an indication that China may not, which was evident even in terms of Alibaba and the other tech companies, that China may actually be going on the path to really, greater equality rather than Deng Xiaoping's model of spurting the growth by letting the rich become richer first. So there is a reversal of Deng Xiaoping's policies during this party congress.
Okay.
Coming to the issues of the international environment, there is, as Mr. Liu said, there's a huge emphasis on security of the Chinese nation. It talks about Taiwan. Hong Kong is a kind of a matter of course that they have been able to resolve the problem in Hong Kong by making changes in the law, etc., and by making the patriots govern Hong Kong, by making those changes in Hong Kong, and therefore they seem to be more reassured about Hong Kong. But there is a kind of feeling of anxiety about Taiwan. When they talk about Taiwan, the developments, Taiwan, international environment, etc., there is a feeling that they might, and when they talk about not excluding the military option, they have never excluded the military option. But saying it again, and not saying that peace, while they will prefer the peaceful reunification, but they will use military if necessary, I think there is a sense of rush and kind of an anxiety in the minds of at least Xi Jinping to hasten and to expedite the reunification, so to say, of Taiwan with China. Neighboring areas, I think when they talk about stability, when they talk about the environment in the region, when they talk about, I think those are the kind of phrases they would use for the neighborhood in any case. I do not detect in the speech any particular emphasis or any particular reason to worry about the security in the area. This is my own reading. Of course, as far as the remaining disputes are concerned, they will go to all possible means. But
you know, Ambassador, as you said,
to my mind,
as you said, and as Professor Roger was saying, the fact that the trust has been laid on security implications of all kinds. A Reuters report says that, you know, in the full work report, President Xi has used the term security or safety at least 89 times, which is up from 55 times in 2017. And the use of the word reform has come down from 68 to 48. So clearly, I mean, you know, Professor Kondrapalli, the shift has been from economic growth now to security. And particularly if you look at the terms like national rejuvenation, the thrust on modernization to military, his statement against unilateralism, the exclusive group of countries against some particular countries, that's what he said. How do you interpret all of this, and how do you look at the security implications for the region, particularly for the immediate neighbors?
Exactly, Tina. I think there is, unlike in the previous Congress reports, this one has a lot of emphasis on the security aspects and the fact that so it has basically two major implications for India if there is so much of emphasis. One is in terms of the Galwan and post-Galwan situation. So Xi Jinping is trying to convey that the border security, etc., will be tightened up. There will not be any major leeway. As you know, last February, Raksha Mantri suggested that in all friction points, there will be de-escalation and disengagement process. But we have not seen that happening even today after 16 corps commanders meeting. So this is one implication of the security. Second, by implying on the security and on the PLA modernization and suggesting to building a world-class military, China is also sending a signal that Galwan issue will not be resolved anytime quickly. And the fact that Chi Fapao, who participated in Galwan, was present in the Congress as a invitee, suggests that they want to reproduce those images of Galwan. So I think that you are right by suggesting security, military modernization. Two of these things are very prominent signaling to India. If I have some time, I would also say the dynamic zero COVID policy enunciation by Xi Jinping suggests that border controls will be stiff and the 30,000 Indian students who are studying in Tianjin and Guangzhou will not get visas. They paid 20-30 lakhs rupees so far. They're not going to get the visas, so which means that we are going to have a lot of problem. In addition to, of course, the businesses
and the
which are
fact that,
dependent
Professor,
on the trade and other.
Despite all kinds of backlash to this COVID policy, President Xi Jinping has been quite persistent. In fact, he seems to be suggesting that he will continue despite the economic challenges, the slowdown that his country is witnessing. Professor Roger, the fact that President Xi Jinping emerges stronger, his grip over not just the party but over military will only consolidate in the times to come. And you refer to the US-China relations. In the last one decade, particularly in the last couple of years, we've seen the US-China relations have been at the lowest level. But as President Xi Jinping now, as we are discussing, as he emerges stronger towards an authoritarian regime, if we can say that, do you see a more assertive China, especially in terms of challenging American dominance?
I think I'm afraid that this is going to be the reality and more conflict that we are going to see for coming years between US and China, because now the US has, according to the Chinese part and their evaluation, the US has been weakening, and this will be a long-term trend. So that there is no better chance for China to overtake the US in different aspects. And another aspect that we have to look at is that, well, because just like Professor Konabali and the ambassador have mentioned, Xi Jinping has been under heavy challenge, especially in the following 5 years. We're going to see that he will be in a more fragile and challenged position compared with before, because he has broken this 10-year rule for each generation. So, well, apparently we will see more and more factions, and groups in the party will try to challenge his power in the following 5 years. So to avoid that, well, there is a divergence. There is a diversionary war theory in international relations. If a domestic leader faces the pressure from the inside, he will try to diverge this kind of pressure to the outside. So to have war with neighboring countries or some unfinished issues with such places like Taiwan and Hong Kong will be a very convenient political tool or political options that Xi Jinping will be taking. So I think in the future, it's very easy for us to see the conflict happening around China with its neighbors. So we have to take heed to that.
Okay, Ambassador, coming to you. So we are going to see more of an assertive China in the times to come, as Professor Rogers suggests. What then should be India's approach, considering the fact that if we compare ourselves to the Chinese economy, we are still a smaller economy. There's no doubt we are, growing at a faster pace, but there's no comparison. Also, the fact that the Chinese PLA is much more stronger today in terms of our military. There are several aspects, especially in terms of modernization, in which we are lagging behind. That's the true reality. And most importantly, China has for decades used our other neighbor, Pakistan, to offset India's clout in South Asia and also in the world. How dangerous is it going to be for us now with President Xi Jinping continuing to be the Chinese president?
Before I go on to this part, I just want to read one small line from the speech given by Tang Xiaoping yesterday to illustrate that for China, the security concern is not India so much as is South China Seas and the Indo-Pacific. He said, confronted with drastic challenges in the international landscape, especially external attempts to blackmail, contain, blockade, and exert maximum pressure on China. All these terms refer to the USA, not to India. India is inconvenient for China. And therefore, what was happening in Galwan is basically to tell India, look, don't try and challenge us. We can keep you in your place. The real threat for China is the USA, and that too in Indo-Pacific and the Western Pacific. Having said that, the right approach for India would be, it's an opportunity for India to basically balance the comprehensive national power. Militarily, we are on good wicket, but I don't think we can expect to become a threat to China anytime soon. Economically also, we are lagging far behind, but if we are able to maintain a reasonably economic GDP growth rate, if we can at least give or compare, get closer to China, which may take many years, that will be something which will actually make China aware of India. Therefore, the path for us is economy. Militarily, we are okay, fine. If we can basically keep China at place and not become a threat to us, we are comfortable. Tina.
Okay, Professor Kondapalli, so it's an established fact that China's intentions are, of course, to become powerful, to challenge the United States, which currently is the leading economy. But the fact that it also faces external constraints, and particularly because its economy has been slowing down, there are several other challenges as well in terms of the supply chain disruption that you spoke about, the ongoing trade wars, etc. How do you think it's going to, go ahead with these external constraints that pose a challenge to the country?
I think the mention about S&T and innovation as a specific item in the work report suggests, of course, to the United States and dual circulation strategy of the 14th five-year plan that is under implementation now. But it also poses a lot of competition for India in the coming years, number one. Number two, I would reiterate that while India is not mentioned in the work report, there are circumstantial issues which suggest that we need to, and given the Galwan background, Galwan was not mentioned in 19-party Congress, but Galwan happened. And the PLA modernization is intensive, and they are actually mobilized forces across the Galwan even as we speak. So this suggests that we need to keep the contingency on the border intact, in addition to the Indian Ocean region, where only recently in August, the Yuan Wang 5 docked in Hambantota despite Indian opposition. So I was just mentioning about that we need to keep in mind the security aspect of that.
Yes.
The other, of course, is there is a lot of other impact because we are in discussions also in the BRICS, SEO, and others. You have seen the Samarkand meeting on September 16th last month. There is no headway in the leaderships, coming together and discussing contentious issues. This also suggests that during crisis time, this would probably be a problematic area that we need to factor in. And also, there is no positive response in any of the work report suggestions so far. And that is an indication that the relations would be frosty for at least to the short-term period in the background of this work report.
Certainly. So this was about the implications on, on India, on the other neighbors like Taiwan, with the United States as well. But Professor Roja, I'll come back to you for one last question. And something that has intrigued me is what happens to Li Keqiang? We've seen, we've in fact read about things not being well between President Xi and Premier Li Keqiang. The fact that President Xi, being 69, gets a third term, the Premier, 2 years younger to him at 67, is on his way out. How do you look at Premier Li Keqiang's future?
Well, I would say this is some factional struggles because Li Keqiang belongs to the Chinese Communist Youth Corps, which is a very strong, faction within the Chinese Communist Party. But now they have political heir, which is Li Qiang, who is going to take over his seat. So I think the political discordance between Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang is because Xi Jinping focused more on the political events and political security on his own. So he's more like Mao, but Li Keqiang is more like Deng Xiaoping, who is more like a technocrat, who focuses more on the economic growth and all the technical details. So, well, politically speaking, their political personalities are different. So they don't get along with each other, especially for the past few years when China has been entering in a, struggling competition, relationship with the great powers. And Xi Jinping will be more likely to focus on the political aspect and front. Well, Li Keqiang still want to keep the open up, economic growth strategy. So I think this is the basic reason that caused their political discordance.
He's going to emerge in a much more stronger position when it comes to picking up leaders for top posts. That's something that we'll see in the weeks to come. Time allows me to take up only that much on the discussion today. Thank you once again to all three of you.